Good morning, everybody. Once again, it's the time for our Lotus Sutra review. Okay, so Master continues on chapter 15, and we're right now wondering every day, every time we wonder, is Master going to continue to talk about the four wisdoms? Because if you remember, several weeks ago, when it first began to talk about the four wisdoms, we actually did a couple of sharings on what the four wisdoms are, and then it just rolled on from that point on. It just continued to go on from that point on, and it goes without saying that even today, there are some very important key points that are still being asked, they're still being talked about. So I think all these things is trying to tell us that all these things, whether in the past or in the present, whether it's something that's a new concept or an old concept, that these are something that she really wants to really etch very deeply into our heart, imprinted so deeply that we will always be talking about it, we will always be hearing it, and we'll always remember it. And that's why for us, our job is to review, is to go through it again, so that if we had somehow forgotten about it, or that if we had somehow misunderstood or did not fully understand, we have another opportunity to revisit it and to see it again. So today, so last week, we talked about pretty much the same thing. The previous 3 or 4 weeks, we've been talking about the four wisdoms. But last week, we talked specifically about the three bodies of Buddha. We talk about what they represent. We talk about what they truly are, both in their definition and what they truly meant. And then we extend further. We talk about the principles and the practices. We talk about how important it is to really practice, to put the principles into action, into actual practices, into doing, to change the noun into the verb. That's very important. However, it's also more important, and with Master's teaching, we also see that it's also very important that we practice with principles. And these are the things that if you remember last week, the example that I used was Master talked about in Sierra Leone, and how important it is that even though she had never been to Sierra Leone, even though that she is never going to go to Sierra Leone, however, she knows all the details because of that empathy, because her heart is always with the people that are suffering. So her heart goes out to the people out there, and it's not a figurative speech where the heart goes out to them, but rather the heart, the mind, and the soul already pours out to the people that are suffering. And that's why Master says that even though she is not there, she actually knows all of it, in terms of she knows all the things that that our volunteer was going to say to her, in a way that she knew what's going on there. Not supernatural power, but rather the fact that she can feel and be one with the people. So principles and practice with principles are both very important, and we must find that balance, that very fine balance that is between. So that's what we talked about last week. And thanks to our team from the US, if you missed it last week, and if any of what I said sounds any bit of interest to you, then you can always go to YouTube, and you can always see the recorded sessions from previous weeks. Okay, so this week, we're going to talk about four wisdoms, but that's going to come later. But first, we're going to talk about question and answer, or Q&A. Now, some of you might be asking, well, what do we really want to talk about? And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the questions and the answers, and we're going to come back to the four wisdoms again. And this is what we're going to talk about for this week's 30 minutes, or roughly 30 minutes. So first, we're going to talk about the question and answer. Now, before that, before we dive in, let's be certain that in the Lotus Sutra, in fact, not just in the Lotus Sutra, but in just about any Buddhist sutra, or not even Buddhist sutra, in any of the religious texts, a lot of it comes in the form of Q&A. Now, in the Q&A, specifically even more, is in the Lotus Sutra. In the beginning, if you remember, in the introductory chapter, you have the conversation, the Q&A between Maitreya and also Manjushri. They use the QA as a way to proceed, to move on to the next agenda, to raise a question, to raise something, so everybody can sort of know what we're going to be talking about. So there have been many Q&A between the disciples, among the disciples, or among the guest and the disciple. In this case, it would be in chapter 12, in the chapter of Devadatta, where there is the wisdom accumulated bodhisattva asking the question, and Manjushri was answering the question. And there were also many Q&A between the teacher and the disciple, the master and the disciple, the teacher and the student. So there have been many back and forth in Q&A. Now, the reason why we want to bring this up is because there are some very important key points to QA, and I would like to cover that today. But before we go in, I want to share with you, this is actually a video, and I'm not sure if you guys can see it or can hear it. But this is a cartoon. This is an animation, not a cartoon. I'm sorry, I apologize. The word cartoon seems to demean the content. This had to be childish, but it's not. It's actually very deep. This is The Simpsons. For those of you that are about roughly my age, or age about 35 to 45 or beyond, you will know that this is a long-running anime series from the US, and it was very popular in the 90s, and then in 2000s, for its very dramatized reality. I'm sure you probably know, so I don't need to do more explanation of what this is. But in this particular episode, in this particular segment that I want to show you, the little background here is that Homer Simpson, I think he lost his job, and he went to his friend Apu's Quickie Mart, and he became an employee. Or anyway, the background isn't important. I don't want to dive into the background and tell you, and the entire session will be about The Simpsons. But anyway, so the one on the left is of Indian origin, okay? Indian origin. And obviously Simpson, even though his skin is sort of pale yellow, but he's actually Caucasian. So in this particular segment, they made a trek through the Himalayas. They went to see the all-enlightened guru. And in this case, the guru is the founder and the CEO of Quickie Mart. And he's all-knowing. So this guy is all-knowing. And Apu and Simpson and Homer, after days and days of trekking, finally reached the office that is at the peak of the mountain in India. And they're going to ask this all-knowing being a very important question, okay? The only thing is that this all-knowing being has all the answers to all the questions you have, but you can only ask 3 questions. So let's see what they ask. Now, I'm not sure if the sound is going to come out, and very likelihood it's not going to come out. But if it's not, then I apologize. So Apu is saying that this is the benevolent, all-knowing, enlightened president and CEO of Quickie Mart. So he's doing the introduction. And so Apu is saying that he's seeking the answer to a very important question all his life. And now he's finally here, get to see this all-knowing guru. He's ready to ask the questions, okay? So, and so the guru says, approach, my sons, you can ask me 3 questions. And so Apu says, that's wonderful, because I only have one. I can, okay, so I only have 1 question, so that's wonderful. I can ask 3. So he says, all I need is 1. And before he asked, Homer began to ask the question. He said, are you really the president and the CEO of Quickie Mart? The head of the Quickie Mart? And so the guru answered, yes. And then Homer continued persisting and says, really? And the guru says, yes. And then Homer right away asks, really, you? And so the guru says, yes, I am. And then he says, I hope this has been enlightening for you. And so for you have already asked 3 questions. And now Apu comes back and said, no, but I haven't asked my question. And said, no, come again. I'm sorry, thank you, come again. Okay, so then, and then so after they come out, Homer says, well, that was a big bust. You know, it's not really enlightening experience. And the fact that he said, and then Homer still says, I still don't think that he is the CEO and the president of the Quickie Mart. So unfortunately, for those of you that cannot see, you can go online on YouTube. If you go onto YouTube and type in Homer Simpson Quickie Mart 3 question, you will find this segment. And that's how I found it, actually. So why did I show you this clip? And I really wanted to, the gist of this clip is really what we're gonna, what we really see in our lives. There are key points to these Q&A. And the first key point is know what to ask. And this is something that we all come to have difficulty dealing with. It's like this: if you were given a chance to ask 3 questions that you would get an answer to, no matter what questions, are you prepared to know what to ask? Do you know what you're going to ask? I mean, if there is something that will allow you to get to the answer to something that you've always been looking for, do you even know what that is? Do you even know what the questions are? Okay, you should be prepared all the time to know what you want to ask, to know what is the question that you have been pursuing the answers to. If you don't even know the questions, then what have you been doing? What have we been doing? And all the questions that's in our mind, do we even know what are the most important questions that we should be asking? So number 1, you better be prepared at all times to know what you want to ask. In that short clip, Homer asked 3 times, are you the president and CEO of Quickie Mart? 3 times. Really? 3 times. And so that was it. That was his question. But is that really what he wanted to ask? I don't know. In case of Simpson, Homer, I really don't know if that's really what he wanted. But if it were me, I know for Apu, it wasn't what he really wanted to ask. So be prepared. Know what you want to ask at all times. But even more important, know the answer. Now, you might be asking me, Joe, but if you know the answer, why do you even bother asking? Good question. A lot of times when we go into a morning lecture or a morning sermon or a Dharma talk or anything, sometimes you'll be wondering, I feel so strange that Master's talking about the things that as if she's talking to me. And Master says so herself today in the morning Dharma talk. She said, whenever she comes up to another chapter, it almost seems like something happens that matches what the Dharma that she was trying to talk about. And that's what I wanted to share with you, is that this is not a coincidence. This is actually by design. Whenever that you are going to a morning Dharma talk, if you have that question in your mind, if you have that lingering confusion in your mind, that is something that's in you. the Dharma that is coming from Master is not going to say, well, this doesn't fit your situation, but rather Dharma is like water. It, regardless of what the container in your heart looks like, the questions, the problem that we face is just like an empty container waiting to be filled with with answers. And all these things, and all these are, it's just a very oddly shaped container. Okay, oddly shaped container. And but the Dharma is just like the water. It can fill any container in any way. And what I'm trying to say is, we already know the answer to the questions that we're asking. We already know the answer to the questions that we're asking. So the fact that we already know the answers to the questions, it begs the question, then why do we ask? Because key point number 3, we're always asking for other people. We are not asking for ourselves. And when I say ask for others, I don't mean to say we are asking like, oh, I have a hypothetical question for my friend. Let's say my friend did this and that, and when everybody knew, you're talking about yourself, you're not talking about your friend. This is not what I'm talking about, asking for others. I'm talking about you are asking the questions for the benefit of other people. And these are the 3 key points that I realized after all of these Q&A. After all these Q&A, a lot of times the disciples asking the questions, they already knew the answers. They already know the answers to the questions they're asking, but they still know what to ask, right? You hear the Buddha praising the disciple. Ah, very good. Very good question indeed. You're asking the right question. So go back to key point number 1. Know what to ask. Number 2, know the answer. These disciples, many of them already knew the answer, but they're asking the questions. Why? Because they're asking for other people to understand. They're not asking for themselves. They're asking on behalf of other people. Okay? And the reason why I want to bring this up is because in this chapter, there were a lot of questions and answers as well. The question was, after all the emergence of all the bodhisattvas from below the ground, from out of nowhere, they emerged from the ground. Maitreya asked the question, who are these people? I've never seen them before. And asked the question to the Buddha. And not just this question, not just the Q&A between Maitreya and the Buddha, but also, if you remember, from chapter 11, from the emergence of the treasure towers, all the manifestations that had already came back from all over the worlds, from all the different places, they all had followers with them. They stayed all the way through chapter 15. And when all these emergence of the bodhisattvas from the earth, the followers also ask the manifestation, where do these people come from? Who are these people? And there are all these questions answered, but they are very different. Master said that these questions are very, very different. First of all, the questions themselves are of different nature. They're of different depth, of different understanding. What does that mean? The followers of the manifestation only cares about who these people are. They're asking on behalf of themselves because they want to know, wow, all these people all of a sudden come out. Who are these people? It's almost like when we're sitting in the main auditorium and Master is giving the lecture, and all of a sudden some people, some very important guests, they come in from the side, and then they come in and sit down at the front, at the VIP seating. And then you'll be asking to the person next to you, hey, do you know who these people are? Do you know what's the matter with these people? What's going to happen, right? So we are just like, so that the followers of the manifestation, they are just there. They see what's going on, and then they ask, who are these people? However, Maitreya, a very, very in this chapter, the very important person who asked all the right question in this chapter, okay, is asking the question to the Buddha. Who are these people? But not just who, but who is their teacher? What have they learned? What is the teaching that these people follow? And what is the affinity and the condition for these bodhisattva who have emerged from the earth? You know, the question is so much profound. It's no longer just asking who those people are. Oh, so that person is the so-and-so CEO and president of the Quickie Mart. Oh, so that person is very important, blah, 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 blah. No, but rather is asking, how is that person? What is the path of the cultivation that these people took to be where they are? How are they different from me? Why is it that they're showing up today? All the questions are the right questions to ask. Not just superficial questions about who they are, but also why and how. What path did they take to be where they are? What did they do? That's different. So if you think back to a couple weeks ago when I asked Master about Dr. Lee, and there was the same thing. My question was very simple. Well, who is this person? Because I never heard of them. But rather, can we ask something deeper about how is that person cultivated to be going deeper than just who that person is? And number two, the answers are also very different. The answers are also very different. Now, when the servants or the followers ask the manifestation, the manifestation of the Buddha simply reply, shh, let's listen to the Buddha. The Buddha will be answering the questions very shortly. Why? Because there are also various different experiences. Because the manifestations cannot answer in full. Just like what we opened up today with what we said last week. Last week, we shared that Master talked about Sierra Leone, saying that she understands what's going on there without being there because of empathy, because her heart is there with them. And because of that, if somebody were to ask about Sierra Leone to our volunteer that were on the ground, yes, they can answer to you what happens there. But the true answer about why and how, about how the suffering comes to be, about why the things are as dire as it is there, it would have to take a magnitude, a different depth of answer from somebody else. And that is why the QAs are also very important. And that's something that I want to bring out for today. Okay. So how do we see this? I mean, you have the person that's asking the question and you have the person that's answering the question. You have the person that's asking the superficial questions and you have the people that can only answer superficially. So that's why they're deferring the answer to the Buddha himself. But how we, as a third party, how do we see this? How do we see these questions? And that brings me back to chapter 5, the parable of the medicinal herbs. And it has always been that in this chapter, the image, the parable was that the Dharma is like the rain, that it rains down upon all the different trees and the plants. And depending on the trees and the plants, they will take in the water accordingly. Okay. But last week, I had this realization all of a sudden that it's not just the plants taking in differently, but rather it's the willingness to take in the amount of knowledge and wisdom. And what I'm trying to say is that it's not the container, it's not the size of the container that you have that you can take in as much rain. It's how much you're willing to put into that container. We all have this innate Buddha nature. We all have it in us. That means our container, our capacity is as big as Buddha, yet we are not willing to open up to let the Dharma come in. So even though my capacity is huge, is big container, but I'm only willing to let a little bit drop at a time of the Dharma to come in. Same thing. How do we see What do we see from all this Q&A? It all depends on how we want to see this. And it depends on how we are looking into this. And that will lead into our next part, the Four Wisdom Revisited. The reason why I want to bring this up again is Master in the past few days, past few weeks, continuously talking about the Four Wisdom, because she desperately trying to get us to combine the Dharma with our everyday lives. She wants us to see it in a different light. Not just the Four Wisdom as she says it, but she used different perspectives to share with us what the Four Wisdoms are. And that's what she wants to show us, is that Dharma isn't what she says is. It's how we feel, how we seize it, and how from action and practice, we come to realize it, what we come to understand it. That's really what Dharma is. And that's really the important thing. So once again, revisiting the four wisdoms is the wisdom of accomplishment, profound insight, the innate identity, and the great perfect mirror. And in the past few sessions, we have already talked about how to put the four, how to combine them, how to see them. And today, we're going to talk about how we're going to combine the four wisdoms and the four joyous and peaceful practices. These are all things that we have been talking about in the past few days, few weeks. Master have been talking about today also the four anle xin, the joyous and peaceful practices, and how they are combined with the four wisdom. So once again, the four practices, the four joyous and peaceful practices include the body, the mouth, and the mind, or the action, the words, and the thoughts. And everything is encompassed in this great vows and aspiration, meaning that everything that we do, we can make it so that it will give us the joy and peace. Everything we say, everything we think, we're all contributing to our joy and our peaceful thoughts. So all of this, if we put all of this together and make it greater, do things for greater majority, do things for all sentient beings, say the words, preach the Dharma for all sentient beings, not just say the things, not just say the words about oneself, but do the actions for all. Say the words, preach the Dharma for all. Think about how to transform, how to eliminate the afflictions for all. And when you make when you make the actions, the words, the thoughts for all, that's great vows and aspiration. Those are the four joyous and peaceful practices. When you have all these four together, then all the things that you do and all the things that you say and all the things that you think about are all going to be giving you joy and peace. So that's what these four peaceful and joyous practices are. So how do we combine the four? The wisdom of accomplishment is something that we talked about, that is something that we have done, something that it's very concrete that we can see and feel. In this case, it actually corresponds to the body and the mouth, the actions and the words. Master, 2 days ago, talked about everything that we do and everything that we say are very concrete. That is something correlates to the wisdom of accomplishment. No longer is our body just an agent to feel the stimulus of all around us. No longer is our words, no longer is our mouth just something that we can taste the stimulus around us, but rather we can reverse it, transform the consciousness into something that is more action. So we can transform our body of action into not just receiving the stimulus, but also acting on behalf of all sentient beings. No longer is our mouth just there, or eyes to see, nose to smell, and mouth to taste, but rather it becomes an agent of action for us to preach the Dharma. That's the wisdom of transforming consciousness to wisdom. And in another word, actually, if we want to put it all together, this is the vehicle of the hearers. The hearers are essentially just that. They hear, they see the Buddha, they hear the teaching of the Dharma, and then they begin to understand. The wisdom of accomplishment is from something that's very concrete. We're able to take something that's very concrete and make it into something that's our knowledge and make it into something that's our wisdom. So that's the wisdom of accomplishment. Now, the other two that I show up here, wisdom of wondrous insight and wisdom of innate identity. These are the two wisdoms that deals with your thoughts, with your mind. So how we see, the things that we see, we can differentiate. This is red. This is white. This is cold. This is hot. This is soft. This is hard. All these differentiation is a function of our mind. We receive it, we touch it, and we can differentiate. This is soft or hard, or this is cold or hot. We can differentiate that. However, we can also see the innate identity, that they're always identical. The attributes are identical, that these are all the combination of cause and condition. And so these are the two wisdoms, to see them for how they are different and to see them for how they are the same. So we always say 分别智平等慧, the wisdom to differentiate and the wisdom to see the similarities. That's all in the mind. So that's also very important. And that equates to the vehicle of solitary realizers. So no longer are these practitioners requiring something that they touch, something that they see, something that they hear to understand the Dharma. No longer do they need to something concrete, but rather something that they commit to memory, their consciousness, their mind, their thought. They can begin to differentiate. They can begin to see the similarities. And then from there, they're able to become awakened to the more Dharma, to the truth. So this is how I see the four practices with the four wisdom. And then at the end, of course, there is the wisdom of great perfect mirror. When we put all of that together into a great vow, this is the vehicle of the bodhisattvas. What that means is, if you're able to have all the wisdom of all the things that you can see and touch, and if you're able to see the differences and the similarities between the things that you can touch and the things that you cannot see and cannot touch, and with your consciousness, then you are able to transcend to the next stage, which is the vehicle of bodhisattvas. But the most important element in here is the great vows. It's the fact that it will continue on for a long time, that this is an iteration that is non-stop. I've always asked the question, after Buddha had become enlightened, what path does he take? Does he now change the path to the path of the Buddha? In my mind, I think the Buddha is still on the same path as the Bodhisattva. He's just much further ahead and much further advanced than the other Bodhisattva. It's still on the same path. So in another word, it's just rinse and repeat. Continue the same thing. Continue to see all the accomplishments. Continue to understand, to learn, and see the similarities and the differences within. And if we're able to combine all of that together through a long duration of time, then that's the Bodhisattva path, and eventually we will be enlightened. So once again, I would like to ask a question. It's great and wonderful to understand and to recite the four wisdoms and the four practices. But what do we see? Same thing again. Why do we care about the Q&A? There's always something in here that we need to see for ourselves. It's no longer just what other people say. How do we take in all this? What does that mean? What do we see in it? And for me, this is how I see it. There are always these elements. There's always the human element, very human, meaning see, hear, touch, the sound, the sight, the feelings, very human, the human elements. And there's always the spiritual element, the element of something that's in the mind, something that you can think about, something that you see beyond what you truly see with your eyes. So in another word, it's something that is conditioned and unconditioned, 有为 and 无为. There are always these two elements, the human element, the spiritual element, and then there's another element, that transcends these elements, that's the vow. The vow will transcend that. No longer am I just caring about how I touch, how I see it, how I hear it, or how I say it. No longer it's about me, how I think, or how I feel, but it's about greater sentient beings. It's about the world. The vow to make this for all sentient beings, to make this for all the space. And then there's time to do this through a very long time. So always, no matter it's the 4 wisdoms, no matter it's the 4 practices, there are always these 4 elements. The things that you can see and touch, the things that you think about. How do you transcend these things to a greater scale, not just you, but to a greater scale? And can you do this for a long, long time? And I have just shared with you the 4 encompassing vows. I have just shared with you all the important principles there are, never leaving these 4 elements. And if you come back to our world, this is very scientific. This is also very logical. This is also very spiritual. And it is very much deeply faithful. What does that mean? It means that Buddhism is very much in our heart, very much close to our lives. It is very much in every part of our lives. We can definitely incorporate Buddhism teaching, Dharma, into our everyday lives because it's very scientific, it's very logical, it's also very spiritual, it's also very much faith related. So wherever we need something, whether it's something that we can touch and see, something that we can say, or whether it's something that we think about, or it's something that's spiritual or faithful, we can always rely on Dharma. So once again, it is Master's wish and intent that we can all incorporate that into our everyday lives. The more we think about it, the more we mix and match, it's no longer about how I tell you, it's about how you hear it and how you digest it, how you make it your own, and how you can share with others and how you can put it into practice so you can share your experience with others. That is the true Buddhism in action. So that's my sharing for today. And I hope that we can all work hard to make it, to incorporate Buddhism into our everyday lives. And that's something that I think is very, very important. So that's my sharing for today. Thank you. And Sister Chao-Ching, please take over. And I believe today we have the sharings from Singapore. So thank you. And please, we'll hear our brothers and sisters from Singapore to share. Thank you.
Okay, I think Impian Mas is ready. We hear from Impian Mas first.
So thank you, brother, for your sharing. If you see the chat, I think there were a lot of people replying that they cannot hear clearly. But one thing is clear. That that we all share the same passion and all the same gratitude for Master. And I think Singapore Book Cafe also said the sound is like coming out from water. And I would like to say that, you know, that's it seems that there is so much Dharma that the sound is coming like from the water, but never be drowned. Okay, don't be drowned in the Dharma, in that we forgot that it's really our lives, and that is the most important. That how we can use the Dharma, around us. That is the most important. So that's how. Look, for wisdom, as the brother said, you know, and I really appreciate you sharing about the consciousness these past few weeks, the topics of consciousness, and I really wanted to bring out to everybody. That's just how I see it, and I'm bringing this out to all of you and share. Hey, if you guys think of it differently and how you guys apply to it differently, it's okay. Let's discuss. Let's talk about it. Because that's the most beautiful part. Dharma isn't water. What is the shape of water? It's not. It all depends on what kind of what kind of container you put it into. The same idea. What is Dharma? It all depends on how we use it, how we rationalize it, how we incorporate into our lives. When you incorporate it, when you use it, when you apply it, it takes shape of that. And that's when it's most useful. Water is most useful when it's to you, when it's already in a container, ready to be used, whether you drink it, you douse it, you use it for any purpose. But it's not useful. It's on the ground, lying there, and you can't use it, right? So it's the same idea. Dharma is precious when we can put it to our perspective and use it in the way that we need to use it to get through our difficulties. So thank you, brother, for your sharing. And even though people said that it's coming out from the water, I think there's just so much Dharma around like water that it's going through. And but I really believe that regardless of how the sound is like, let us all not be hearers. Let us all take it to heart. Let us be bodhisattvas. We know that even though the sound that we hear is not clear, but we in our heart we see the differences, but we can see the similarities. So and that always, and remember and continue that we will be on the path of bodhisattva. So thank you, brother, for sharing. And I would love, if I have a chance, or if you have come back to Taiwan, it would be wonderful if we have a chance to sit down and let's all share about, let's all think about what does consciousness really mean to the problem that I'm facing, and how does it affect me, and how do I use it to get through my life? I think that's really what Dharma is really about. Not just to tell you how, but also give you a direction. So, Sister Xiaojing, I think there's another center that's going to share now.
Yes, Brother Joe. Singapore side. Brother Eric from Impian Mas. Now let us hear from Singapore side. Sister Qiao Rong. Please take over,
Experience in Singapore. What I learned in Tzu my past experience that I able to quit drinking, quit smoking, gambling, all kinds. Actually, today I'd like to share what I used to arrange my company, my workers, using some of the learning from Tzu. Likewise, like to be mindful with all the jobs that we've done, and get more into it, to be more responsibility, like the hierarchies we are talking about. There is no hierarchies in, everybody is in equal, and then we do it like there is no power involved in our everyday daily activities, that we only use like what I say, we lead with so-called methods, and not using power to overpower people, to give orders to fulfill all the tasks. And then this all been learning from our master, from Tzu also. And then after finishing up a job, we are determined that they will have to be mindful to look into it more, to look for more better way to get more improvement on the products that to be sent out to our clients. And one thing that I'm very I used to be coming to Xiang on weekends, every weekend. In the last few months, that I just neglected because due to my working. So I hope that I will follow up with my Xiang again in the coming months after my work's been a little bit okay, settle down. Thank you, everybody.
First of all, I'd like to thank you once again, because it is exactly what we are trying to do. What Master is hoping to do is that the Dharma is most useful when it's being used, and it's most useful when it's being applied. So thank you, brother, for applying it to your work, to how you run your company, or to how you do your business. I think that's very important. And I think a lot of these things, it's like I said, it's very scientific, it's very logical, and it's very analytical. And so it's something that we can definitely use. And we can always, if you see something happen, and you can always trace it back to the cause and the conditions, and then you will see how things come to be, then you will not be so shocked. You will not be so caught off guard. You will not be able, you would also be able to see much further away, much deeper into everything, and give you a much better insight. So all these are very good practices that we should do with our daily practices. These are the things that we should do every day to help us carry out our functions as an individual, as a family member, as a son, as a daughter, as a husband or wife, or as a sibling, as something that we can do, something that we can use. However, the last thing that the brother said really struck me, was that the brother mentioned that it was going to catch up on the Xunfa Xiang because of work. When the work gets, I think what he meant to say was when it gets a little bit more smooth, or a little bit more on track, etc. And I just feel the opposite. I feel that Xunfa Xiang will get your work to be more on track, because it's not the work that's on track, it's you. Xunfa Xiang ultimately will help us find our track, to put us on track. And when we are on track, then no matter what our job or our work or our business is, then we will know where to guide it. So once again, I think for me, and Master has been mentioning this many days now, talking about paving the road, making sure that the road is paved, making sure that we know the direction. It's precisely that. Xunfa Xiang hopefully will give you the direction, and gives you the energy, the power to go through something that might be otherwise very difficult. So best of luck and best of wish. And I'm sure it will be a very rewarding as we put Dharma into our everyday practices. So thank you, Sister Xiaoqing. Is there anybody else would like to, any other center would like to share?
That's all for this week, Brother Joe. Do we have time for Q&A? Maybe we have.
Yes, we have time for Q&A. Absolutely, especially after talking about Q&A so much today, we should have Q&A. So the first question, very quickly. Let me recite the question. If I could chant Ami Tuofo and vow to go Pure Land, and I don't have to come back, why do I need to make Tzu vow to come back in human realm? You don't need to. No one is making you need to do anything. None of this, okay? None of this is need. Like need. Oh, I need to cultivate. I need to do this. No. Well, at least no need to. However, we make it our own. So I read somewhere that, well, no, let's not go there. So what we talked about is, remember transforming the four wisdoms, or remember transforming the four joyous and peaceful practices. a person, our mind, our state of mind is truly peaceful and joyous, not only when we adhere to what we do and what we say and what we think, but the most important key is the vow. The vow will make it greater than just not what you say, what you do, what you think, but also what you do for. Who do you do this for? What do you say this for? And what do you think about? You do things for all sentient beings. You say things, you preach the Dharma, and you think about how each individual with their different capacity, how you can influence them, guide them, and help them. So that's what I believe. And therefore, I make the Tzu Chi vow myself to come back if I can in the human realm when I can. And then that's what I would do. So no, there is no need. You need to do this in order for you to pass the course. You need to do this in order for you to become enlightened. I would hate to say that that's the only course of action, but that's the course of action that I take and the course of action that I deeply, deeply believe in. So the first part, if you could chant Amitofo and vow to go Pure Land, don't have to come back. If you believe that, good, then do it. If you believe that, I'm just sharing with you in here. We all share the same belief and we're all on this path together. And let me tell you, I believe it because I see Master and she's walking, I don't know, many, many, many thousands and thousands of steps in front of me. But I see her and I know that that's who I want to become. If one day I have cultivated and practiced so much Dharma that I can become like her, that's what I want. Just like Buddha, we want to become like Buddha or find that Buddha nature from within. That's why I set my goal to become like them. That's my direction. So whatever they walk on, that's the path that I'm going because I believe it. She has shown it to me. She had guided me and I believe it. That's why I'm walking it. So I don't need to make the vow. I make the vow. So whoever asked the question, if you believe deeply that chanting Amitofo is going to go to Pure Land and you don't have to come back, then that's your belief. I believe deeply because I see Master had already shown that she set out a role model for us and I believe her path. She showed us the path that she walked on. She showed us where she is by walking on that path, all of which I agree and I want to become like her, just like Buddha. I want to become like Buddha and I need to continue to walk on more, no matter how long it is. That's the direction I want and that's the path I'm going to take. So there's no need to make this vow. Like need as in like I need to do this in order to survive or in order to move on to something. No, there's no need. It's only that you believe it. Okay. We have time for one more. Which is a better option for the deceased? I would assume spend the money to do prayer ceremony or doing donation on the deceased behalf. Let me just say that for the deceased, they have no options. They're deceased. Okay. So the question is, which is a better option? You know what? They have no option. Let's not think for them. Okay. So once again, it's almost like I am speaking on behalf of the person who asked the first question. Why do I need to? There's no need. There's no need. And I'm not going to tell you what's the better option for you. But I have found the better option for me. But have you found the better option for you? That's the most important. That's why we go back to the QA at the beginning, right? Know what to ask. In fact, a lot of times you already know the answer. You already know the answer. So thank you for all the people asking because you're asking on behalf of all the other people. We already know the answer. Okay? Is it better option for the deceased to spend on the prayer ceremony? Hey, what's so bad about prayer ceremony? It puts everybody together at the same time, same mind, channeling that sincerity for the well-being of all the people and all the sentient beings in the world. That's not so bad. Donation on the behalf of the deceased, that's wonderful too. You know, any way you cut and dice it, it's the same. For the deceased, they have no options. But it's for us, for you, what you think and what you believe. And this is where the Dharma comes in. That's most important. Okay? So last part, question 3. And I hope that I hope this is answering to your satisfactory. Question 3, during execution. Whoa, this is all matters of questions. I'm sure you're all asking on behalf of other people. During execution, I can't even get past this part. Why are we asking on behalf of other people what execution feels like? But anyway, during execution, executor will press the button. Oh, that's in the case of pressing the button. Sometimes they don't press the button, sometimes they shoot. But anyway, executor will press the button to let the prisoner be hung to death. Oh, this is very graphic. Is this executor commit killing and cause negative karma? I'm sure this is a case of asking on behalf of the executor who is afraid for their lives, that they have caused so much negative karma for pressing so many buttons to hang people. Okay, what about those working as insect exterminator? Okay, so twofold. The first part, is this executor commit killing? Now, killing on the, so there are always two sides to killing. Rather than seeing the word killing, I really want to say, how do we preserve life? And preserve life isn't about, oh, so Joe is pro-life or pro-choice. No, I'm talking about preserving the essence of life. I'm talking about there are things that need to be killed. For example, our afflictions. For example, the poisons. There are many, many parables talking about armies putting on the armor, being on the battle to kill, to destroy the afflictions, the greed, and the poisons. The most important is our state of mind, what we put in our storehouse, the eighth consciousness. The moment that the button is pressed, what is going through the minds of the people that's being killed and the executor? That is the most important. It is not me to judge. It's not me to judge what kind of karma it causes because I don't know. But I know that there are things that I would do and there are things that I won't do. For example, the insect exterminator. In the abode, if you come here during the summertime, you will be greeted with many, many, many very small flies, or they're not really flies. They're not even mosquitoes, but they're very small. And even though they're small, they pack a punch in that they will just bite you, and they would the bite mark will be swollen, and sometimes it will be very allergic, but it would be very itchy. And so people will be like, "Don't hit it, just wish it away, like will it, like go, stay away." Like that's really gonna get them away. But anyway, so what do the people do? They put on repellents. Instead of saying how I can kill it, they speak about how I can prevent this from happening. And if you think about it, this is what Buddhism is all about. It's about how to switch your state of mind so that you can prevent things from happening. You can look into the future and know that you're walking on the right path. You don't have to worry about being on the wrong path. Not thinking so much about hanging a prisoner, not thinking so much about punishing somebody, but rather thinking about what I can do to save, what I can do so that this doesn't have to be, so that no one has to press the button, so that no one has to have any negative karma. That's asking the right question. And that is knowing the right answer. And that is asking on behalf of all the other people. It's not about, is it right or wrong to press the button? But they have caused great injustice. It's more relevant to ask, what can I do that in our world, that there is no more killing? that there's no more wrong, that there's no more of these negative karma. Same thing. What can I do so that we can make sure that the environment is safe and good and clean, so then there won't be not so many infestation of insects? That's how we go about this. And that's what we get from this. And that's what I think about when I see these questions. So no, I don't want to think about whether this is causing negative or positive karma. All I want to think about is what I see is there's still so much death. What can I do? If we can do more to purify, to bring harmony, to make sure that there's no war and there's no death, there's no more killing, no more disaster, that's my vow. And that's Master's vow. And that's the path that I walk on. So no, I chose the path not chanting Amitofo. I chose the path of Master. I chose this path. And it doesn't mean that I will never chant Amitofo. Trust me, I chant it all the time. It just means that the path that I walk on is a path that I really believe in. It's not something that I need to. It's a path that I choose. And because I choose it to be, I'm willing to take on whatever that might happen as a consequence of this path. So that's the sharing for today. I hope the answer you find to be adequate. But the most important part is, how do we feel? What does it mean to me? And that's the important part. How do I apply it? How do I incorporate it into my life? And that's what I ask myself every day. That's the question that I ask. And in fact, I know the answer too already. That's the same thing that I've been sharing with everybody every time. So thank you, and best wish for the coming week, and hope everybody have a very safe and happy day. Okay.